Our story begins on the planet Kaller, one of the final planets involved in battle, as the Clone Wars seem to be coming to a slow ending. Jedi Council Master Depa Balaba, her Padawan Caleb Dume, and her clone battalion led by Commander Grey were pinned down in a bunker that was being overrun by droids. Luckily, Depa had called for reinforcements a while ago, and she thought that now would be as good a time as any. And so now, as the droid battalion marched at them, a rumbling could be heard from the nearby snowy forest. A large snowball rolled in at them, crushing a handful of droids, and from the trees, Jedi Knight Anakin Skywalker leapt high into the air, ignited his lightsaber, and landed to cut down a handful of droids. From the trees now came the Bad Batch, with Hunter, Wrecker, Tech, and Echo handling these droids from the ground, while Crosshair sniped any reinforcements from a distance. Depa looked on, and she quickly shook her head with both a bit of amusement and disapproval. She was, after all, the Padawan of Mace Windu. She shared many feelings about Skywalker with her master, but there was simply no denying that when it came to fighting in battle, there was no one better suited for it than Anakin. And although she hadn't worked with the Bad Batch before, she knew a lot of them, and she heard Commander Grey groan his own disapproval. Like Skywalker, these clones were not at all traditional. Hunter had enhanced senses that made him the best tracker in the entire Grand Army. He was also an excellent, hard-headed leader. Wrecker was the largest, strongest clone, but his brute strength may take away some of his brains. But that's where Tech comes in. No one was smarter or more advanced when it came to hacking into machinery or computing the best odds to attack a situation. And of course, Echo, former 501st clone under Skywalker, who's almost become more machine now than man, but his fighting spirit didn't disappear, despite his new mechanical advantages. And of course there was Crosshair, the greatest sniper in the army, but his cold, calculated precision with the blaster also reflected his personality. He had a job to do, simple as that. And so when all of the droids were finally dealt with, Skywalker and the Bad Batch walked up to Balaba and the clones. Anakin gave a respectful bow, then snarkily said that if they're done hiding, now would be a great time for a counterattack. Balaba again shook her head, and Anakin winked to Caleb Dume. He was in awe. Most young Jedi were when they met Anakin, but Balaba pulled Anakin to the side, and she sternly asked him what he was doing here. When Anakin tried to act like he was just helping, she told him that he was supposed to be on the secret council mission. Balaba was a member of the Jedi Council, and she knew that Anakin was supposed to be spying on Palpatine. Anakin just turned away from her. The last thing he wanted to think about right now was Coruscant and spying on Palpatine. He was meant to be out here, fighting in battle. Which is why Anakin spent the last evening monitoring clone channels, figuring out where reinforcements were being sent to, and then following them. Anakin came to Kaller completely on his own, without any approval, except for Padme's. She was the only one he asked, and Padme was totally fine with it, knowing how stressed out Anakin was. He couldn't stand another minute on Coruscant. The nightmares of Padme seemed to fade as soon as he was off planet, and he just couldn't bring himself to keep spying on his friend Palpatine. He wasn't sure if he trusted the Jedi Council, he wasn't even sure if he trusted Palpatine, but being thrown into the middle of all of it was far too overwhelming. So, Anakin, after saying goodbye to Obi-Wan as he departed for Utapau, came here and he found the Bad Batch. Balaba told him this is why he was not made a Jedi Master. His impatience, his inability to follow the Council's orders will not get him to mastery any quicker. Anakin was tired of this already, and he shot back that without him, both her and Padawan Dume could be dead now. Balaba calmly said that if the Force willed it to be that way, then so be it. Anakin couldn't stand this anymore, and he just told Balaba he couldn't stay on Coruscant. He couldn't, for his sake, and for everyone else. And Balaba felt a touch of darkness in the Force, as Anakin seemed to remember something. She was intrigued, as Balaba was no stranger to the dark side, as on a mission to Harun Kal during this war, she was ambushed by Grievous and his army. Balaba lost 90% of her men in a brutal manner, and embracing the darkness was the only way to fight back. But she rejected it in the end, and she was defeated, resulting in a 6-month-long coma from her injuries. When she finally did recover, she began to train Caleb, and ever since then, she was an extremely loyal Jedi to the Light, and especially to the Council. Perhaps if Anakin needed help, she could be there. But as the two of them were ending their talk, Clone Trooper Tech could be heard saying that the battle may not need a counterattack after all. According to his encrypted comm chatter, Jedi General Obi-Wan Kenobi has found and engaged Grievous on Utapau. Anakin smiled, saying that if this is true, then Obi-Wan will not fail. and he felt joy as he realized the war may really be ending soon. Part of him felt bad for leaving Padme on Coruscant, but she was the one that encouraged him to try and get away from everything until it is all settled. Anakin allowed himself to imagine it, a life free of war with his wife and his child. It would be perfect. But Balaba said that until Grievous's defeat is confirmed, they must keep fighting. So Hunter and the Bad Batch offered to take the offensive, which Balaba said was a good idea. Anakin looked down to Caleb, and he asked if he wanted to come with them. Balaba nodded her approval, and Anakin and Hunter told the Padawan he better be able to keep up, and they took off running through the snow. But across the galaxy, Darth Sidious stood next to his communicator. On the floor of his office lay the bodies of Kit Fisto, Saesee Tiin, Aegon Kolar, and of course, Mace Windu himself. Sidious now looked to the former Jedi Temple Guard, now Grand Inquisitor, who arrived here just in time after Sidious was sure that Anakin was not coming back. Sidious wasn't sure where that foolish boy disappeared to, but his opportunity to be a part of the grand plan was now gone, at least for now. The Inquisitorius would have to take his place, as it was time to execute Order 66. And it was done across the galaxy, on Felucia, Megiddo, Utapau, Kashyyyk, Seleucami, many different Venators, Cato Nemoidia, Coruscant itself, and of course, all the way on Collar as well. So as Depa Balaba watched Anakin and Caleb run with the Bad Batch, she felt a shift in the Force, and Commander Grey took a sudden transmission. Balaba saw a hooded man on the hologram tell Grey to execute Order 66, and Balaba was barely able to dodge blaster fire from Grey right away. More clones now approached her, and in the snow in the distance, Anakin came to a sudden halt with Caleb. They turned and saw Balaba under fire, so Anakin acted. Without thinking, he turned and he ran back at Depa. The two of them may not get along, but Anakin would always protect a Jedi in danger. And as Anakin ran at her, Balaba turned and yelled at them to run away. She was hit in the shoulder, but Anakin ignited his lightsaber, running faster. He turned and he pushed Caleb away. He had to do this alone. It was not safe for the young boy. And Anakin flew into the air, using the Force to gather a wave of heavy snow, and then threw it at the clones. Balaba covered herself with her robes, as Anakin landed to cut through the clones' blasters, and began pushing them away. Balaba did the same, helping Anakin cut through the blasters, until the firing completely stopped, and the two Jedi were back to back, demanding to know what was going on. Commander Grey charged at the Jedi, missing a punch, as Anakin kicked him hard in the head, and Grey was just repeating the phrase, "Good soldiers follow orders," as he grabbed at his head. Anakin could tell something was wrong with the clones, on a level no one understood. He knew the clones. They wouldn't just fire on a Jedi like this. So Anakin pulled Grey to his hand, removing his helmet, as Depa was keeping the other clones at bay, making sure they don't approach. Grey's eyes were shifting around, as if his brain were fighting something. He grabbed at his head once again, and Anakin realized that his kick may have dislodged whatever caused him to fire at the Jedi. So Anakin closed his eyes, putting a hand to Grey's head, feeling for his thoughts. Grey screamed out in discomfort, but Anakin quickly found something, and now he remembered Tup and Fives and the inhibitor chip controversy. Anakin used the Force to find the chip, and he helped Grey to override it inside of his own mind after Anakin's initial kick messed with it. Grey fell to the ground, and he dove for his blaster. He turned, firing stun blasts into all of the nearby clones, and they fell to the ground in unison. Grey turned to the Jedi, saying they weren't going to stop. No matter what, they were going to follow orders until they die. And suddenly, Balaba felt something, turning just in time to deflect a sniper shot from Crosshair in the distance. Anakin turned to see Hunter and the others tackle Crosshair to the ground, and he realized that perhaps only one member of the Bad Batch has the chip. Anakin closed his eyes. He could feel the fear rising up in him for Obi-Wan, Ahsoka, Padme, the entire Jedi Order. He felt waves of death all around him. It was overwhelming. But something spoke to Anakin in this moment, telling him this is what he was born for. The Sith are trying to take over, and it's up to him to stop it. So Anakin pushed the dragon of fear back deep down inside of him, and he locked it inside of the mental walls that he worked so hard to create. And Anakin looked around. It was time to get to work. The Republic ship above the planet that brought Depa and the others here was largely vacant of troopers, as most of them were down here in various parts of the planet. So Anakin ordered Hunter and Depa to go find Caleb in the woods, while he, Tech, Echo, and Commander Grey travel up to the ship to secure it. Wrecker knocked out Crosshair with a stun blast, and was monitoring him and the other knocked out clones. These missions would result in Caleb being safely found, and Anakin and the others were securing the ship by hitting any clones on board with stun blasts, then getting to the medical room. Tech and Echo would work with Anakin to figure out the best way to remove the chips, and the clones began undergoing this procedure to make sure they don't turn as well. Meanwhile, Anakin started putting together a plan with Tech as the two of them inspected the inhibitor chips using the limited resources aboard the Republic ship. Tech used his own research tablets along with the ship computers to begin searching the files inside of the chip, determining first why the ones in the Bad Batch members didn't all go off, but they were heavily encrypted. Luckily, Echo was able to hack into the computers and override the encryptions, allowing Anakin and Tech to see the files hidden inside of the chips. There were 150 contingency orders inside of the chips, and the one activated was Order 66, execution of all of the Jedi for treason against the Republic. But Tech was quick to point out the one underneath it, Order 65, execution or arrest of the Supreme Chancellor. But Echo said there was just one problem here. The orders could only be activated by Palpatine himself or those in his inner circle. So Commander Gray pulled out his communicator and he showed the hologram of Palpatine ordering Order 66, and Tech had a sudden idea, but it would take a while, so he told Anakin, Gray, and Echo to get everyone else on board the ship while he puts together his plans. And so they did, and for at least the next hour, Anakin, Depa, Hunter, Wrecker, Crosshair, and the other clones in Depa's battalion got on board, and these clones had their chips removed as well. When it was done, Tech had them set course for Coruscant, as he presented something to everyone, a holographic recreation of Palpatine's face and voice that he created from the Order 66 hologram, reciting a new order: execute Order 65. This would have to work, and they all took off for Coruscant. The flight over was extremely tense, as Anakin and Depa were monitoring the constant moving of unconscious clones into the medical facility to have their chips removed. Skywalker and Balaba tried contacting different Jedi frequencies, but their communications were going nowhere from this Republic ship. They had to fear the worst, and the HoloNet showed the burning Jedi Temple. From where they stood on this ship, the only survivors in the entire Order were the two of them. But Depa was able to help Anakin into some meditation, describing her experiences with the dark side, helping Anakin to control his emotions. Anakin felt extremely worried for Padme and for his friends, but he knew the only way to save or protect them was by defeating the Sith. So he listened to Depa and accepted her teachings, knowing this was a crucial time for him. When the ship emerged above Coruscant, they were immediately asked to identify themselves, and so Commander Gray took the lead, saying they were returning from Collar after disposing of Jedi Depa Balaba and her Padawan. The planet was secured, and so they were returning to help with the Jedi insurrection here on Coruscant. Once they were cleared, a ship containing Anakin, Depa, Caleb, and the Bad Batch entered the atmosphere, and was headed straight for the Republic Executive Building. The mission to get inside and activate the communications device would begin, as Palpatine was declaring himself as Emperor inside of the Senate building right now. So this was their chance. At the emergency door, Wrecker used his strength to rip the door off its hinges, and Echo immediately plugged in to stop the emergency alarms from going off. Once inside, Hunter used his elite senses to listen for footsteps and guide the Jedi and clones through the safest of the hallways, and together they moved from hall to hall, avoiding the clones until they made it to the Chancellor's office. It was eerily quiet, but as they entered, Depa felt a deep sadness in her heart as she looked to the floor. Mace Windu, her former master, lay dead on the carpet with Fisto, Kolar, and Tin. Anakin closed his eyes for a moment of mourning, then told Depa they need to keep moving. But as they got to the communications device, both Jedi sensed something else, and suddenly, a red double-bladed lightsaber spun from the corner of the room, and Anakin barely deflected it as the Grand Inquisitor emerged, lightsaber spinning, telling the Jedi their time was up. And from outside the window, 3 clone gunships rose from the building hangar and prepared to fire on the Jedi and Bad Batch. But Anakin said, "Oh, I don't think so." And from the roof of an apartment building next to the executive building, Crosshair fired an explosive device perfectly from his sniper. The elite sniper was waiting here, as the group was expecting some eventual resistance. He was spotted, and a group of Coruscant Guard clones went to take care of him. But Caleb Doom was waiting on the roof with him, as he was able to protect Crosshair from the clones coming to take him down. Crosshair gave him a nod of respect, and Wrecker held the explosive button, immediately pushing it, resulting in all 3 of the gunships exploding together, crashing hard into the walls of the executive building. This gave Anakin and Depa the chance they needed, as the building shook for a moment, allowing the two Jedi to run at the Grand Inquisitor and quickly cut him down before he could even fully recover. Anakin, Depa, and the Bad Batch were no easy foe. They were ready for just about everything. And Anakin told Echo and Tech to get to work, as Echo plugged into the communications device, and Tech activated his recreation of Palpatine to broadcast a new message to the clones all across the galaxy. Execute Order 65. Override 66. Anakin looked around, asking if it worked, and Wrecker said he didn't feel anything. Hunter shook his head and said of course he didn't. They removed their chips. But Tech was able to look into the encrypted clone chatter and see that new orders were currently being given out here on Coruscant by Commanders Fox and Apo. Take down Palpatine in the Senate chamber. And in the Senate, Palpatine was raising his hands as he said that this galaxy will now be ruled by his empire as they build a safe, secure society. But before he could finish the final word, a rocket blast hit his Senate pod, and it fell to the Senate floor. Palpatine scrambled to safely land, but as the pod landed he rolled out of it to see Fox, Apo, and at least 50 more clone troopers aiming their blasters at him. Without really even thinking about it, Sidious blasted a wave of lightning to send half of them crashing into a wall, then pulled out his red blade to ignite and deflect a barrage of blaster fire. But it would not be enough. The clones had him at every angle, and another rocket blast at Palpatine's legs threw him hard into the wall. Fox and Apo, under Order 65, were able to finish off the Sith Lord as the Senators of the Galaxy saw Palpatine for who he really was. Most didn't know much about the Sith, but the Red Blade was known around the galaxy as Dooku's Blade, and seeing Palpatine wield the Red Blade showed who he was. Throughout Coruscant, Masters Yoda and Kenobi were in the Jedi Temple when this happened, but it wouldn't take long for them to find Anakin, Caleb, and Depa, and the four Jedi would quickly go to the Senate in complete disarray, presenting everything they knew. After what the Senators saw, it wouldn't be hard to convince them of who Palpatine truly was, and Bad Batch members Hunter, Echo, and Tech spoke to the Senate as well, informing them of what was happening and how the clones were controlled. When the Senate knew the truth, they obviously would reject the Empire and ask the remaining Jedi to step in and make sure this war comes to a peaceful end. So Yoda would have Obi-Wan Kenobi be the Jedi Senate leader to ensure the Republic stands. Obi-Wan, known around the galaxy as the best negotiator in the Jedi Order, took this mission in stride and was able to quickly locate and defeat the Separatist leaders. In the Jedi Temple, Yoda recorded a message that told all surviving Jedi to meet him on Tython, and within a few days, around 150 of the 10,000 that were alive when Order 66 came in would arrive. Jedi like Luminara Unduli, Coleman Kaj, Kelleran Beck with Grogu, Baylan Skoll, and so many more were here. Anakin would remain on Coruscant with Obi-Wan, so he could be with Padme as she gave birth, and despite all of Anakin's immense stress, the death of the Sith and the refreshing of his mind off-world allowed him to be at peace as Padme did give a safe birth to twins, Luke and Leia. Ahsoka would be here with him as well, as Maul was officially in custody. And on Kamino, the mass chip removal was underway, as the Bad Batch was leading the mission to help with this. And during this, they would stumble into a clone girl called Omega, who refused to leave their side until the batch began to warm up to her presence. Even Crosshair would eventually enjoy having her around. As the clones underwent their removal, they were kept on as Republic security, and the Jedi began to rebuild on Tython, as Yoda stepped away from his post, as Depa Balaba would become Grand Master, with her first act being to make Anakin a Jedi Master. Ahsoka would rejoin the Order, and Depa would ask her to finish Caleb's training, which would allow Ahsoka to progress as a Jedi as well. The Republic and the galaxy were safe, and the Skywalker twins would eventually be introduced into the Order as the first of a new generation of Jedi. And folks, that is where our story ends today. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. The Bad Batch, obviously an outstanding show. Yeah, have you guys watched it? I hope you have. If you haven't, go do it right now. Anyways, appreciate you guys watching. This is one that I posted in a poll a little bit ago. What, a week maybe? A few weeks? I don't know. Anyways, there was a lot of support for it in the comments and in the voting, if I remember correctly. So, yeah, wanted to get this one done. Of course, I really enjoyed it as well. Putting Anakin on... I've done, I think, a lot of these. Of course, Utapau, Kato Nemoidia with Plo, Felucia with Sakura, Megiddo, Kashyyyk. Really just, if there was a Jedi that we saw in Revenge of the Sith or in the Clone Wars, putting Anakin there to see how the scenario would play out. And this is how this one went. So, yeah, enjoy. I hope you enjoyed it. It was fun to do a little Depa Balaba stuff. I don't think I've ever really done a story with her kind of in the center. Same with Caleb Doom before he becomes Kanan in Rebels. So, yeah. Hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what you thought, and I'll see you in the next video.